Somewhere tonight, someone is staring at a phone screen, thumb hovering over the power button, ready to give up on the one prayer they've prayed every night for years. I need you to know, right now, before anything else, that prayer already has an answer moving toward it. You don't know it yet. Neither did the widow with the empty jar. Neither did the shepherd boy nobody thought to invite to the important meeting. But something shifted the moment you stopped scrolling. Stay with me. What happened next is going to surprise you. I know why you're still here. Somewhere between the last video and this one, something made you pause. Maybe you couldn't explain it if someone asked you tonight. Maybe it felt less like a decision and more like your hand simply refused to keep moving. That's not nothing. Can I tell you something before we go any further? You've been tired in a way that doesn't show up on your face. The kind of tired that smiles through dinner, answers texts on time, shows up to work, and still goes home to a silence that asks questions you don't have answers for. Nobody around you knows how long you've been waiting. Nobody sees the specific shape of what you're carrying. I do. I've seen the nights you lay there, running the same request through your mind so many times it stopped sounding like words and started sounding like static. I've seen you check your phone one more time before sleep, hoping for news that never came. There's a fear underneath all of it, isn't there? One you'd never say out loud to anyone. The fear that maybe I stopped listening, that somewhere along the way, your name slipped off the list. It didn't. Sit with that for a second. Not because I need you to feel something, because I need it to be true for you before we go any further. I'm not going to tell you that you should have prayed harder, or believed more, or waited with more grace than you had left in you some days. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because I need you to hear something your heart has been asking for, without knowing how to phrase the question. The moment has come. Say that back to yourself slowly. The moment has come, not someday, not eventually, now, while you're listening to this. Here's what I need you to understand, and I need it to actually land, because everything else I tell you today depends on it. You already took a step, not the one you're picturing. Not some grand, dramatic turning point you'll tell people about one day. Something quieter than that. Something that happened in the part of you words don't usually reach. Do you remember the exact second your chest loosened, just slightly, a few moments ago? That was it. That was the step. Your heart, tired as it was, decided to lean forward instead of turning away one more time. I've been waiting on that step longer than you know. I'm not going to explain the rest of it yet. I know you want me to. I can feel the question forming. What do you mean? What changed? What happens now? But some truths don't survive being rushed. If I hand you the whole thing right now, you'll hear it and move on with your day like you always do. I don't want you to just hear this today. I want it to actually reach you. So stay with me a little longer. You've stayed through worse than this. Think back to exactly where you were 1 year ago today. You didn't know how this year would go. You didn't know the specific weight you'd end up carrying, or the specific way you'd end up surviving it. But you did. That person, the one who made it through what they weren't sure they could, is still in here, listening right now. Maybe with a knot in their throat they didn't expect. Maybe with something stirring that feels dangerously close to hope, the kind that's learned to knock quietly first, because it's been disappointed before, and it isn't taking any chances this time. Let it in anyway. It's safe this time. You thought you clicked on a video tonight. I need you to remember that thought, because by the end of this, you're going to understand it meant something else entirely. I promise you this isn't going to be another message that leaves you exactly where it found you. One more soft voice telling you to hang in there and then going quiet. I have something to show you. Something that's been happening around you the entire time you thought nothing was happening at all. There were things I did while you were only watching the door that stayed shut. Moments I moved that you walked straight past without noticing, because from where you were standing, they looked like nothing. Coincidence. Bad timing. A missed connection. They weren't any of those things. But before I show you what those moments actually were, I need you to see something else first. Something heaven was watching, while you thought you were completely alone in it. This part of the story is only just beginning, and it's better than you think. I watched you. Not the way a stranger watches a crowd pass by, half attention, no real focus. I mean, I watched you the way a father watches from the window, waiting for headlights that haven't turned onto the street yet, unable to look away even for a second. I watched you cry one night while you were praying. Quiet crying. The kind that doesn't announce itself, just slides down while you keep whispering the same request, over and over, like maybe saying it again would make it more real. You thought that prayer went nowhere. It didn't need repeating for me to hear it. I heard it the first time, and I heard the fear underneath it too, the one you never said out loud. Can I tell you something you never realized? You thought those tears meant your faith was cracking. They didn't. They proved you hadn't stopped talking to me. A person who's given up doesn't cry while they pray. They just stop praying. You never stopped. I watched you try again after the thing that didn't work, after the door that shut in your face, after the person who let you down exactly when you needed them not to. Most people would have stopped there. You didn't. I watched you get back up and try one more time when trying again made no logical sense at all. I watched you choose forgiveness on a day it would have been so much easier to hold the grudge. Nobody claps for that decision. Nobody even knows it happened most of the time. I saw the exact second you let it go, and heaven was not quiet in that moment. I watched you open your Bible on a night you didn't feel like reading a single word of it. And I watched you press play tonight, when a quiet voice tried to talk you out of it, told you it was probably nothing, told you to keep scrolling like you always do. You didn't listen to that voice. Let that settle for a second. Something underneath that voice, something quieter and truer, made you stay. That wasn't random. Have you ever wondered why some of your hardest seasons never actually broke you? I do. I was there for every one of them. Let me take you somewhere. A small kitchen, almost bare. A widow standing at a table with one jar of oil and barely enough flour for a single loaf. She has already decided this will be the last meal she makes for herself and her son, not because she wants to give up, but because there is nothing left to plan for after tomorrow. There's a knock at the door. A stranger, a prophet, asking her for something that makes no sense on paper. Feed him first, before her son, before herself, with the very last of what she has. Picture her hands as she reaches for that jar, shaking maybe, every practical bone in her body screaming that this is reckless, that a stranger's request isn't worth her child's last meal, and she pours it out anyway. Not because she understands how it will work. She has no idea how it will work. She does it because something told her to take the step before she saw a single sign it would matter. The jar didn't run dry, not that day, not for a long time after. You weren't asked to give away your last jar of oil, but you were asked to keep believing with nothing left to point to. That's the same step, the exact same one. Let me show you another room. Cold stone, no window, the smell of damp air that never sees sunlight. A 17-year-old boy sold by his own brothers, years later still sitting in a cell nobody remembers he's in. Another sunrise he can't see. Another day that looks exactly like the one before it. Joseph isn't imagining a palace in that cell. He's just trying to survive the day, interpreting dreams for other forgotten men, doing small, invisible work in a place built to erase him completely. Here's what he doesn't know. In a palace he's never set foot in, a king is having a dream he cannot understand, and the only man in that entire kingdom who can interpret it is sitting in this forgotten cell right now, still choosing integrity in a place that had every reason to strip it out of him. You thought heaven was silent during your hardest years. Heaven was arranging a summons you couldn't see yet. Do you see it now? Heaven doesn't wait for the breakthrough to start paying attention. Heaven watches the waiting. Let me show you a field. A boy nobody thought to invite to the important meeting that day, out with sheep while his own father forgot to mention he existed. No crowd watching him practice his sling against a lion and a bear. No applause for protecting animals nobody else valued enough to guard. Nobody saw that. I did. Let me show you an old man packing up the only home he's ever known, walking toward a place he's never seen, with nothing but a promise and his own 2 tired feet. He doesn't ask for proof first. He walks, and the proof comes later, further down the road than he expects. Each one of them did something small before anything changed. They obeyed in the moment nobody was recording. Heaven doesn't wait for the miracle to get excited. Heaven celebrates the faithfulness that happens right before it, when there's still no evidence, nothing to point to except a decision to keep going anyway. You thought those hard days were empty. You thought you were just surviving, no growth, no purpose, just endurance for the sake of endurance. Heaven saw every quiet choice, every tear that fell where nobody could see it. None of it was wasted, not one single day of it. You've spent so long believing you were the one doing all the waiting, waiting on me to move, waiting for the silence to finally break into something. Here's the part that might be hard to hear at first, and then feel like the most comforting sentence I've said to you tonight. You thought you were waiting for me. I was already building something for you. While you were counting days, I was arranging details you couldn't see from where you stood. While you wondered if anything was moving at all, I was moving pieces underground, the way a gardener works beneath the soil long before anything green breaks the surface. Nothing about your waiting was empty. It was the exact place the roots were forming. Remember the step I told you about? The one your heart took without you noticing. This is why it mattered so much. You leaned forward right into the middle of something I had already been building for longer than you know. There's more I need to show you, things that changed in you and around you, while your eyes were fixed only on what still looked unchanged. There are things I did that you never saw. I think it's time you finally heard them. I softened a heart. Somewhere, in a conversation you weren't even part of, someone who had grown hard toward you felt something shift they couldn't explain. They didn't call it me. They just noticed they weren't as angry as they used to be. You may never know whose heart it was, but something that used to work against you doesn't anymore. Have you ever wondered why some conflicts just quietly stopped? No big conversation, no apology you can point to. That was me. I don't always need the argument to end loudly. Sometimes I just end it. Do you remember the door you were so sure you wanted opened? You prayed about it with your whole chest, so sure it was the answer, so sure I was being slow, or difficult, or simply not listening. I said no, not because your desire didn't matter to me, because I could see what was standing behind that door, and you couldn't. Imagine walking confidently into a room, certain it holds exactly what you've been asking for, and I'm the one standing at the threshold, quietly turning you away from something you can't see yet. That's not cruelty. That's a rescue wearing the clothes of disappointment. You called it delay, I called it protection. Let that sit for a second. I protected you on an afternoon you don't even remember. An ordinary Tuesday, a plan that fell through for no clear reason. A delay that made you late and irritated for the rest of the day. That wasn't carelessness. That was my hand, moving you out of a path you never had to walk down, because I moved first, before you ever knew there was danger to move away from. Maybe you're wondering why some of your hardest years produced the most of who you are now. I strengthened your character in a season you'd rather forget entirely, the one you still don't talk about at dinner tables. I wasn't wasting that time. Endurance doesn't grow in easy soil. It never has. Can I show you something instead of just telling you? Picture a mountain range in the middle of nowhere. Same rocks every morning. Same sheep. Same wind moving through the same dry grass. A man in his 80s, who used to be somebody, who used to have a title and a palace and a future everyone could see coming, now spends his days counting animals nobody else wants to count. 40 years of that, not 4, 40. Imagine what that does to a man's sense of his own significance. Imagine waking up on year 31, in the exact same spot, doing the exact same task, wondering if this dry, quiet mountain is simply how the rest of his life is going to look. Moses had no idea a bush was going to catch fire on an afternoon that started exactly like 10,000 others before it. He wasn't preparing for it. He was just tending sheep. I wasn't wasting a single year of that silence. I was stripping the pride off a prince so that what remained underneath could actually lead a nation out of slavery. You thought your quiet years were wasted too, didn't you? They weren't. Let me show you one more scene before we move forward. A hillside covered in half-built wood, sawdust thick in the air, the sound of hammers going from sunrise until the light gives out. Neighbors walking by, some laughing outright, some just shaking their heads at the old man building something enormous under a sky that has never once produced rain in the memory of anyone alive. 100 years of hammering, 100 years of the same joke told 100 different ways. Not raining today, Noah. Sky looks awfully clear, Noah. He couldn't see the flood coming. He only knew what I'd told him to build, and he kept building it anyway, nail after nail, year after year, with nothing but obedience holding the whole project together. I answered prayers you don't even remember praying. You asked for one thing on your knees at 2 in the morning, and I gave you something else, something that solved a need underneath the one you knew how to name. You asked for relief. I gave you strength. You asked for an exit. I gave you the ability to walk through it and come out different on the other side. The prayer you almost stopped praying was the one I was already answering. Read that back if you need to. It's true. Let me finish Joseph's story now. That same cold cell, still no window, years still passing with no word from anyone who once called him family. He wakes up another morning expecting nothing new, because nothing new had happened in longer than he could count. And then, without warning, the door opens, not for punishment, for a razor and clean clothes and a walk he never saw coming, straight into a throne room, in front of a king who woke that same morning from a dream no one else in the kingdom could explain. He didn't see that summons coming. I'd been arranging it for years, in a palace he'd never visited, through a dream I planted in a mind he'd never met. One more, a young woman brought into a palace she never asked to enter, given a title she didn't fully understand the weight of yet. Nobody told her that one day an entire nation's survival would depend on whether she was brave enough to walk into a room uninvited, knowing it could cost her life. I was positioning Esther for that moment years before she understood why she was even there. Do you see the pattern yet? Every one of them lived through long stretches where nothing seemed to be happening, where if you'd asked them in the middle of it, they might have told you their life was frozen. It wasn't frozen. It was changing in a place their eyes couldn't reach. Here's the truth I need you to carry out of this part. Your life already changed before your circumstances did. The shift didn't begin the day you finally saw it. It began earlier, in conversations you weren't part of, in doors you never saw open or close, in a heart, maybe even your own, being reshaped while you were only aware of how tired you felt. You weren't stuck back then. You were being planted. The greatest miracle rarely announces itself. It grows underground, in the dark, exactly where human eyes can't follow it, until the morning it's finally ready to break the surface. And what I'm about to tell you next isn't something that already happened. It's happening right now, while you're still listening to these words. Picture a theater before the show starts. House lights down, curtain still closed, no audience yet, just an empty room holding its breath. But behind that curtain, nothing is still. People are finding their places in the dark. Lights are being angled. Cues are being set, one after another. in an order nobody in the seats will understand until the curtain finally lifts. That's where you are right now. I am working, not tomorrow, not once the circumstances finally line up the way you've been hoping. Right now, in the exact minute you're listening to this, something is moving on your behalf that has nothing to do with luck. Think of a locked door for a second. Not the kind you can kick down, the kind with a mechanism so old and rusted that even the key doesn't turn it right away. You have to work it slowly, feeling for the give. That's what I'm doing with the thing in front of you right now. I am opening it, not with force, with patience. You may not see the door move yet. Sit with that for a second. The mechanism is already turning, even in the silence. You know how a broken bone hurts worse in the days after the break, right when the doctor says it's actually starting to mend. That's not the injury getting worse. That's the healing itself, which has its own kind of discomfort nobody warns you about. I am healing something in you right now that might feel harder before it feels better. Not because I'm hurting you, because healing has its own timeline, and it rarely feels like relief on the way there. Remember what I told you about the widow's jar, about the roots forming underground while you only saw stillness on top. This is the same thing happening in your body of faith right now. Nothing about this season is wasted, even the parts that ache. I am teaching you patience, and I know that word alone can feel exhausting to hear when you're already tired of waiting. I am teaching you wisdom, the kind that never comes from a sermon, only from actually walking through the fire and coming out the other side different. I am teaching you discernment, so the next time a door opens, you'll know in your gut whether to walk through it or leave it shut behind you. Can I tell you something you haven't considered? The very patience you're frustrated with yourself for lacking, I am building it in you at this exact moment, through the waiting you hate the most. I am protecting you right now, in this exact moment, from something you will likely never even know existed. Some of the clearest proof of how much I love you will be the disasters you never had to live through, because I moved you out of their path before you ever saw them coming. You called it a delay. I called it a rescue you'll never have to thank me for, because you'll never know how close it came. I want to be honest with you about something, because I think you deserve honesty more than comfort dressed up as a promise. I'm not going to tell you money is arriving tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you the promotion is guaranteed, or the diagnosis is about to reverse itself by Friday. Those are easy words, easy to imagine, easy to hold on to for about 5 minutes before reality sets back in. I didn't come to hand you an easy promise. I came to build something in you that doesn't collapse the moment circumstances refuse to cooperate. A steadier heart, even while everything around it stays uncertain. Wisdom you didn't have this time last year. A peace that has nothing to do with your bank balance or whether your phone rings with the news you've been waiting for. Strength you've already been using without giving yourself credit for it. Relationships shifting, some drawing closer, some pulling further away. Both movements necessary, even when the distance aches more than you expected. A sense of purpose returning slowly, quietly, the way your eyes adjust to a dark room until shapes you couldn't see a minute ago start becoming clear. An identity that has nothing to do with your job title or your bank statement, and everything to do with the simple, unchangeable fact that you belong to me. You are not what happened to you. Let that be the sentence you keep from this whole message, if nothing else survives the day. Keep praying, even the short ones. Even the ones where you don't have new words, so you just repeat the same tired sentence you've been saying for months. I hear the heart behind it every single time, even when the words run out. Keep trusting, even on the days trust feels less like a feeling and more like a decision you have to make on purpose, because most days, that's exactly what it is. Keep walking, even slowly, even limping if that's what today requires of you, because a slow step forward is still forward, and I have never once measured your faith by how fast you moved. Some of you listening are closer to something than you think, and right here, at exactly this stage, is where the temptation to stop gets the loudest. Because nothing dramatic has happened yet, it's tempting to believe nothing is going to. That is the exact spot where giving up costs the most. My child, do not stop now. You are closer than you think. I know some days feel identical to the one before it, and it becomes easy to believe nothing is actually moving underneath the surface. But a seed looks exactly the same the day before it breaks the ground as it did a month earlier. Stillness on top has never once meant stillness underneath. The next step I'm asking of you isn't some enormous leap you have to work up the nerve for. It's simply trust. The same quiet, ordinary trust that carried you to this exact moment, listening to these words right now. The next step is not harder. It is simply trust. And what's waiting on the other side of it is worth every unseen moment it took you to get here. Everything I've told you today comes down to one truth, so let me say it as plainly as I can. The step you took wasn't simply pressing play on a video. It was the moment your heart became willing to listen again. That's what actually happened underneath everything else. You could have kept scrolling. You could have let today move through you the same way yesterday did, and the day before that, letting the noise carry you along without stopping to listen for anything underneath it. But you didn't. Something in you paused, leaned forward, even slightly, even if you couldn't have explained why. That pause was the real step. Everything else was just the surface of it. Remember the widow. Remember Joseph in that cell. Remember Moses on that same dry mountain for 40 years. None of them knew which ordinary day was actually the turning point. Neither do you. That's the part I need you to sit with tonight. It might be this one. Think of today as a new beginning. Not because everything around you has changed yet, but because something in you has shifted quietly. The way morning arrives before the sun is even visible. The sky just slowly stops being dark, without announcing the exact moment it happened. You're entering a new season. I won't tell you it comes without difficulty. Seasons still have their weather, but it's a season where you're walking with me differently than before, more aware, more willing, more awake to what I've already been doing in your life this whole time. Carry peace out of this moment with you, not the fragile kind that only holds up if today goes exactly right. The kind that stays steady even when today doesn't cooperate, because it was never built on your circumstances in the first place. It was built on me. Carry hope, the real kind, not the kind that pretends hard things aren't hard, but the kind that keeps walking forward anyway because it already knows how this story ends. Carry your identity, the truth of who you are underneath every title, every failure, every label anyone has ever handed you like it was fact. You are mine, and that has never once depended on how well you performed. Carry purpose, the quiet, steady kind that doesn't need applause to feel real. The kind that shows up in the small moments, the way you treat someone who can't do a single thing for you in return, the way you keep showing up even on the days nobody's watching and nobody would blame you if you didn't. I'm not going to promise you tomorrow holds some dramatic miracle waiting at your front door. I won't build you a promise out of sand just to make this feel good for the next 5 minutes. What I will tell you is something steadier than any single tomorrow could ever be. You called it silence. I called it preparation. You called it delay. I called it protection. You thought you were forgotten. You were being formed. Let those words rest for a second before I say the last thing. I will never leave you. Not for a single day you thought you were walking alone. Pray with me, right where you are, before we go. Lord, thank you for the step I took today, even the smallest, quietest version of it. Thank you for seeing me on the nights I felt invisible to everyone else. Thank you for the doors you closed to protect me, even the ones that hurt at the time, and the ones you're opening now that I still can't fully see. Help me trust you in the waiting, instead of measuring your faithfulness by how fast things change. Give me the strength to keep walking, even slowly, even without every answer I want. I choose to trust you today. Amen. I have always been walking beside you, even on the days you believed you were walking alone. If this message reached something in you tonight, take a moment and write it out, right where you are. I choose to trust you. Somewhere out there, someone else is scrolling through their own hardest night, feeling exactly like you did before you pressed play, and those 5 words from you might be the only light they see before they close their eyes tonight. Let us know in the comments where this found you, and what part of it stayed with you. And if this was a place your heart could rest for a few minutes, stay close. There are more moments like this one waiting for you here, and we'd love for you to be part of what's coming next.